What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Get a Grip with Hey. I'm your host, Kendall, and I'm here with a very special guest, Becky Williams. Welcome, Becky.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So I'm really excited for Becky to be here. She has so much to share with you. A quick intro is that she is I was going to say owns a woman-owned business, but it's a little redundant. She is a woman who owns a business. She is also a jiu-jitsu badass. She is also the owner of Usos, which is a company that I'm sponsored by and I've worked with for, I don't know, over a year now.
Or coming up on it.
Yeah, coming up on it. She goes, don't get ahead of yourself. Or whatever birthday, okay, or your birthday. But she's also just somebody who is very open and honest about her experience in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as women. This podcast episode, I expect to be really impactful for so many different kinds of people, men, women, children alike, or teens. I don't really know if children are listening to the podcast, but you go what I'm saying. People from all walks of life. In many ways, kind of deep diving into the experiences she has as a woman who runs a business, but also as a person in jiu-jitsu, embodying facets of herself through martial arts, through things like dance. Obviously, we'll get into that and you'll be able to discuss more of it. But I was really excited to have her on because she is not your typical, I bring a jiu-jitsu athlete on and they talk about their career as a pro fighter, right? She has a lot of experience with training hard and being very involved in the jiu-jitsu world, but there is so much more that comes to jiu-jitsu that doesn't usually get talked about. I think especially in a public conversation or setting like this, a lot of times we do it behind closed doors or we talk about it, with each other in private, but really bringing some light and energy to that in a public way, hopefully can bring just some, I don't know if the word is new perspective or maybe feeling seen or feeling understood or just knowing that you're not alone, bringing some camaraderie to our space in a really cool way. So I'm really excited that you're here and let's dive into it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get ready. Okay. So the first question that I'm going to ask, because I always ask it on the podcast, is for you as, a woman with so much going on in your life. I mean, you had mentioned she's owns a business, but she also has another full-time career. There's a lot going on. What does it feel like to you to have a grip on your life, so to speak?
Yeah. I feel like the thing that helps me most. Okay, so obviously, often I experience overwhelm. That's a pretty common experience. And the thing that helps me most is coming back into my body and just being present with what I'm feeling. So the other day, I was, I went to bed and I was lying in bed and I got this overwhelming sensation of just too much to do, stress, just thinking about all kinds of stuff. And instead of bypassing all of that, which I feel like a lot of well-intentioned people encourage us to bypass those heavy emotions. And I can understand why they're really uncomfortable. But instead of bypassing that, I just thought, okay, these emotions are showing up right now. And this overwhelm is showing up right now. Where is it in my body? It's just here in my chest. And instead of turning it into a problem, instead of turning it into something to not feel, I just let myself let that overwhelm melt into the body. And to me, that's really the essence of embodiment. And that sort of realigning of myself, realigning I guess the emotional self with the physical self instead of resisting. There's so much resistance. There's so much aversion to what's happening to us now if it's perceived as something that we don't want, right? Like stress or overwhelm. And so just trying to allow helps a lot. Rounding down into the body helps a lot.
I love that. So would you say that when you have a grip on your life, or, it's so funny because I think that comes and goes in waves, but when you feel, that you have a sense of, okay, I have a grip on my life, that you're feeling grounded and, fairly peaceful or serene or just manageable, maybe sometimes, is that something that you're doing on a daily basis? Is that kind of how you pinpoint, okay, I'm in good integrity right now to myself?
It's been something that I've had to practice over time, and the more I practice it, the more I remember to do it. I don't know if anybody can really live a modern life and be in that state all the time. Yeah. I don't even know if you necessarily want to be in that state all the time. And that it kind of goes back to the the grasping aversion type space where we think we're supposed to be a certain way all the time to be doing like a good job as, you know, a modern human. It's like you're going to go in and out of stuff. You're going to go up and down. But it's been easier with time and practice to come back to that place. So, and you mentioned that I'm also working a full-time career. So, outside of Mil Usos, my like day job is a court interpreter for a superior court system in California. And so I translate court proceedings.
Just casual, you know.
Yeah.
Like no intensity or big ups and downs or look into the evil of human beings.
Yeah. I mean, like it can get super, super intense. And the job involves, so court proceedings go at around 180 words a minute, and we're interpreting at the same time. So it's about 3 words a second. And I mean, you can do some really heavy cases, like super, you know, violent cases, or just these emotionally heavy cases. They're not far and away, like they're happening every single day. So it helps a lot to just like feel my body sitting in the chair. I go into like this observation mode where there's no judgment, just like, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm working, this is happening. And that it's like a meditative space. It's like you kind of just pull out and you just
like kind of flow state, would you say? Like how people talk about with athletes, or is it
not? No, it's not a flow state, because that's when you're like, to me, that's when you're consumed with it and you don't even realize like time is passing, right? This more meditative state, I've practiced meditation for a long time. I'm not like a avid daily practitioner, but I'm like a consistently regular practitioner.
Yeah.
And for me, there's a couple ways you can practice meditation, but one of them is to kind of allow everything that's happening to just happen and to feel it all happening around you. So, but without judgment, right? So you're just kind of watching, you're observing. So
zooming out a little. Yeah. Not quite disassociating, because we're still plugged in.
It's not disassociating because you're paying attention.
Yeah.
You're paying attention. Disassociating is like, I don't want to feel it. I want to make this go by because I don't want to feel it. This is the space of kind of feeling it all at once.
But maybe as the observer rather than being I don't know, not a victim is not the right word, but rather than all of it happening to you, just zooming out and observing all of it happening at once, and you're a part of it. Is that
you're not consumed with like the emotional reactivity. You know, you're just kind of like watching it all happen, observing it all happen, allowing. It's like a state of allowing. Yeah, so that helps a lot. And I try to remember to practice that. But you know, it's okay that the practice is imperfect. It's okay that it's not happening like all the time. I don't think that the human experience, first of all, I don't think you can achieve perfection. And also, who's saying what is perfection?
Perfection is a subjective anyway.
It's totally subjective, and everything's changing all the time. Like, so even if you do reach that state of perfection, it's eventually going to pass. So I think that just embracing the messiness of the human experience is really helpful. But one way to do that is to move into that observation space where it's just like, everything that's happening, it's fine right now. Even if I'm uncomfortable, even if it's too hot in here, even if like I really don't like this person, it's all okay. It's that allowing state.
I love that. It's so funny because I think that I even do that in something as simple as like work meetings. If I'm in a work meeting, especially on Zoom, because I work from home quite a bit these days, and there's so much going on all the time because I'm like at home, I have the dog over here, I've got this, and then you have, you know, people on camera, and then I'm feeling impatient because I'm not really listening to someone to understand. I'm listening to them to respond. And I'm like, can they just be done already? And you're on camera and you can't feel the energy of people the same way you do in person. So I feel like I have to practice that a lot, where I literally, I tell myself, I'm like, Kendall, just sit in your chair. Just sit there. Just take a deep breath. Can you just zoom out, observe everything that's happening, and be the observer, and not have to be so uncomfortable with all these things that are irritating
That's
you?
it.
Yeah.
That's it. I feel like we get really consumed in our headspace with these automatic emotional reactions, especially to things that we don't like or we don't want or are irritating or annoying, or we just want to get it over with. And those emotional reactions, it's kind of like a blurry lens that gets in the way between you and the other person, or you and even just your own life. And so to move into that state of allowing and acceptance, where you're just like, this is where we're at. This is happening right now. I guess it's presence, or mindfulness, but the mindfulness is, I think a helpful state of mindfulness is a state of allowing, where even if I'm super uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable or whatever, and even when you like practice meditation, it's really interesting if like, your arm starts to itch or something.
Right.
Itching is a really interesting meditative, observation, because the impulse to get rid of it is so strong. Super.
I have that experience so much, whether it's an itch or like a tickle, or I've practiced, I've gone to a lot of different meditation, I don't know if retreats is the right word, like workshops to practice these things, like Dispenza, stuff like that. And one of the things that a lot of the teachers will tell you, or the guides, whatever you call them, is even if your back starts to hurt, and that is such especially I think as an athlete, but humans in general, we're taught like if something hurts, alleviate the pain, whatever means necessary. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this can't be good for my back. And then I'm like, Kendall, what if like the muscle you're flexing or what you're working on with your mind is more important than the back right now? And it's an interesting game to play. Yeah.
I think there's some balance there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's an interesting experiment to just observe the discomfort and to even observe how you're reacting to the discomfort. So it's like, oh, my back hurts and I don't like that. And I can feel all of this aversion and I can feel all of this resistance to it, versus drowning in the aversion and the resistance, and then like, oh, my back hurts, this whole thing sucks, I just want to leave, I just want to lay down. If you choose to move because your back is in pain, or like my legs fall asleep a lot, and like it's not good to let it, that's your nerves, please move, please alleviate some pressure. So if I move, I try to do it in like this is a conscious decision. It's not just an automatic reaction. And so getting back to like the original question, like getting a grip, I feel like being able to move out of that automatic reaction space and into just a more conscious space where it's like, okay, I'm feeling super overwhelmed right now. It makes total sense because of X, Y, and Z. So not demonizing that and just being like, it makes sense. But also it's okay that it's here.
Yeah. I love it. So let's go into your life story, because I know that there are so many topics that we want to cover. And that I always ask, like, okay, what's the 5-minute version of your life story? We'll probably stop at different points because we talked a little bit before the podcast. And just so you guys know, for anybody listening, we're going to talk about some heavy stuff, some sensitive stuff. We'll probably touch on domestic violence and a couple of sensitive topics. So just be aware if you're in the space to listen to that now. Awesome. If that's something that just be aware that you might turn that off if that's something that's sensitive to you. It's funny because I don't think I've ever put like a trigger warning in a podcast. But it makes me think, because I talk about my eating disorder and stuff, quite often. So anyway, just throwing that out there, if that's something that's sensitive for you. And if it is, totally normal too. I mean, it's unfortunately much more common than we realize sometimes in the jiu-jitsu community. So let's go into, the version of your life story and kind of how we got here. And we'll put a couple things like, yes, being a woman who started her own business, has her own career, but is also like happily married, beautiful partner, like love and respect your husband. I think sometimes we feel that it has to be one or the other. Like I'm either a superwoman or I'm like #trad wife, like only one option. But you're a woman of you encompass so many things. So let's hear kind of how you have arrived where you are. Obviously not arrived as finished, but how we've gotten to today, October 1st, 2024.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Ventura County, California. So like Los Angeles area suburbs. I was raised in a super religious family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've come a long way, but the religion that I was born and raised in was Baptist Christian. So,
oh wow, Southern.
That is very cool. Yeah, it's like a super strict, particularly closed-minded. These are my judgments, but
that's your experience.
That's my experience. Yeah,
doesn't mean that everyone everywhere is having the same practices, but
judge. All right, that's
and also just to put it out there, like everyone has their different experience, but they like what I have an experience I have with a church can be totally a different extreme than somebody else has.
Totally,
and either way, it had a huge imprint on you.
I mean. Some of the most beautiful people I know today are church-going Christians. They're not Baptists. They are Christians. So I'm not trying to like put everyone in a box or anything, but to give you an idea, the school I went to a tiny private Christian school. Our graduating class had like 50 people, and we were not allowed to have prom because dancing was like too sensual. And to avoid temptation, like we didn't have prom. So
got it.
Yeah. So that's the environment that I grew up in. And I'm trying to think how to like tell the story because I feel like it kind of.
Yeah, I think whatever way you choose,
so like
somewhere else if it makes you.
So, like, I guess if we're just like tracking like the professional development or whatever, I went to school in Orange County. I went to college in Orange County and studied Spanish. I knew that I wanted to be a Spanish interpreter from high school. The government field trip for a government class to the courthouse. And there was an interpreter there working in the courtroom that we like were invited to observe. And I was like, I like love foreign languages. I feel like I enjoy studying them. And something that was really important to me, even when I was like 16, 17 years old, I was like, I want to study something or work at something that I enjoy. And I know that I'll work twice as hard and it won't feel as hard. So languages were that for me. But I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. So, yeah. So, through like different programs and stuff in college, I came out like pretty conversational. But then it wasn't until I moved to the mountains of Peru that I like really, the language really solidified.
Different experience, right? You could say different experience with Spanish.
Yeah. So, I lived in the Sacred Valley of Peru, which is like that's like a huge tourist area. That's where like Machu Picchu is. And
okay, I'm going to pause you only because I'm literally going to look at the map of my phone. I'm such a visual person. You keep talking, but if anyone ever had to see the amount of Google searches that I do of random places, I am totally that girl. I will look on Google Maps and I will zoom around and I'll click on every little image and I'm like, and then I feel like I've been there. Like, I swear. So I
never go on Redfin and just look at houses.
Yes, dude, I'm the biggest Zillow hoe of all. Like, I don't even want to buy right now, but I am just, oh my God, I love it. And I do the same thing with vacations, like Costco travel. I'm all up in there. Like,
I just want to do what's out there.
I just like to live. Okay, so you lived in Sacred Valley?
Yeah, just lived in Sacred Valley, Peru.
Okay, I'm going to do some zooming and I'm going to post some things of it later.
So for people who aren't zooming, so Peru is in South America. So, I mean, this is a Jiu Jitsu podcast, right? So most people know where Brazil is.
Yes.
Brazil is on like the eastern side of South America. Peru is on the other side, the western side of South America. And they share like the Amazon jungle crosses over from Brazil into Peru.
She's right. I'm looking at it, and it's true. It's very true. We'll have to zoom in on that.
So, the like lower elevation areas are going to be like your Amazon jungle, but then there's like a high jungle area, which is a higher elevation, but like still a very green area.
Got it.
And
so how long were you there?
I was there for a couple of years. I honestly moved there and like wanted to make a whole life out there. But it didn't work out and I had to come home. And that gets into like the story of like the domestic violence, the stuff like that.
So no jiu-jitsu up until that point.
No jiu-jitsu up until that point. But I actually started a business out there. So yeah, it was a community-based tour company, and I led like backpacking excursions and hiking excursions to like kind of off the beaten track, like not agriculture, archaeological sites. There's just so much ancient archaeology from the Incan Empire that's just like hanging out.
Would you recommend this as a place where people can travel, whether that's solo traveling or group traveling, men, women?
Oh, yeah. That's like I would say one of the world's probably most like famous.
Well, obviously Machu Picchu, I think of, right? But so you felt very comfortable there.
Peru's been experiencing like some political unrest. So yeah. But I don't know how much it has affected that area because it's the capital
tourist-based anyway.
Yeah, and the capital of Peru is very far. The capital of Peru is on the coast, and then like all the Sacred Valley stuff inland. So yeah, but it's the city you fly into to get in there is Cusco.
Okay,
and that sits at about 15,000 feet elevation. So as soon as you get off the plane, you can't breathe. Yes, like you can feel it.
Wow.
Yeah, the air, and actually that was one of the reasons too that I really struggled down there. Is I just had chronic altitude sickness. It was just like I just like never really adjusted to it.
Yikes. But you were in your like we'll talk more about skincare and stuff later, because Minimalist is marketed as a minimalist skincare branch. Makes sense because it's literally like you do two things and that's it. That's it. Great. And I bring it with me everywhere, and I just don't want to bring anything else. So, and it works for everything. So but you weren't living that minimalist. I mean, someone would hear that and be like, oh, you were doing Spanish and meditating, and then you moved to Peru, and they think you were this like Buddhist girl, but you weren't.
Yeah, that wasn't really happening before. So Peru kind of forced me to like drop a lot of stuff. So I was living in a brick adobe home. We had electricity, like limited electricity, but there was no indoor plumbing. There's no grocery stores the way we have grocery stores. Basically, all of your food is purchased at like an open farmer's market. It was really cool though, because like literally people would pick stuff out of their garden and then bring it to market. And you just, they're just like, it's laying out on blankets and you just, purchase from them. I learned to cook when I was out there, and because if you didn't cook, you just didn't eat. I love cooking now. Like it was so fun, and the produce is so good. Yeah. So,
but you met a guy.
I met the guy before.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I met him when I went to study at a Spanish school out there. And actually I went to study at the Spanish school because I had broken up with another guy. And I was like, I need a change. I need to like get out.
As we do.
I'm going to Peru.
Yeah.
So,
better than dyeing the hair. Although, sometimes the dyeing the hair worked out really well for people and they get a lot hotter. But also I've had friends do it and then they're like, I should have never done that.
It was more expensive than dyeing my hair. I will tell you that. So flew out there and studied at a Spanish school in Lima. So in that capital coastal city. And his aunt and uncle owned the school. So he worked like the front desk, and we were both, early 20s, like super young. And so we met there, and then I came back home, and then during my absence, I saved up a bunch of money, and we were both just frustrated with like life as a disenchanted, 20 something to be like, where am I going? What am I doing? Nothing is working. I don't understand how to like launch myself into anything.
Yeah.
And he felt the same way. So, and he was a native to the Lima area. So there was no like, I guess I say that because I was a North American with like a North American cultural understanding of life. And he was a South American with his South American understanding of life. And
one thing I just pause for a second is that when in Jiu Jitsu, this is not something I've experienced, but many people in my life, and people talk about this, that in Jiu Jitsu, a lot of times people end up dating Brazilians, and Americans and Brazilians get together, men, women, either way. And a cultural experience that people have is for real. And it's not something it's funny because I was telling you, Chris grew up in Southeast Asia and Thailand and Vietnam, but he grew up with an American parent and a Japanese parent. And then when he was 16, I think, moved here. So he has a bit of a mix, but it's different when you have a parent who is, so when someone grows up in a different country and that's all they know, and then the if you haven't experienced that before, had someone close to you talk about it, you don't realize that you really have a different understanding of
100%.
the world. It's very hard, even if you speak the same language, to get on the same page with communicating your values and what you think is right, and how, even as simple as like, I mean, not that it's simple, but like how men and women operate in home. That's one of the biggest places people struggle.
It can be even simpler than that. So like, just the way you communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing in Peruvian culture, and there may be Peruvians out there who disagree with me, but this is my friend. When you're down there, okay, so and I also experience this in the courtroom when I'm working with Spanish speakers from other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Americans we feel super comfortable with ultra direct communication. So if I ask you a question, you feel comfortable just saying yes or no. You don't necessarily need to give me a bunch of context. We're a low context society. So like if you're in a courtroom and you're testifying, the attorneys just want you to say yes or no. But that whole concept can feel very, very foreign and almost rude and cold to a high context society native. So the high context society native wants to tell you the whole story, because of course you need to have the whole story to understand whether or not, the answer is yes or no. So for example, like, did you see him come in the front door? Well, I was out back. I was gardening. I was, because my mother-in-law was going to visit and I needed to do just yes or no.
Oh my God, it's so funny, because I grew up from a very young age around Brazilians, and my parents obviously American, but we grew up in Jiu Jitsu schools every day, almost all day or all night. And I feel that the whole thing about like the laid back South American culture, doesn't matter if we're late, we'll stay here talking till 11 p.m. It's like, I do feel like that has had somewhat of an imprint on the way that I communicate and the way that I relate to other people. So kind of like what you're saying, when people do the low context version, I have had to train myself not to take it as an insult.
Are making the point for me.
Right,
so like, when I'm out there living in Peru and I'm just being my low context, I'm like, oh, did you want to go, here or there or whatever? And I was just like, no, I'm good. It's super rude. And it's like, you don't just say that. Either make up an excuse or, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Blah, blah, this and that. Blah, and I would just answer directly. So those kinds of things. And I don't know that I'm doing that, and they don't know why I'm doing that. And then I remember there were so many times where I just really wanted a quick, simple answer, and I would get this, and I was like, just yes or no. And they're like, yeah, but you need to understand. We don't. Like, did you get this or did you not? Did you purchase this or not? Because if you didn't, then we need to, strategize tomorrow to make or whatever it is. And so, just those kinds of things can happen. And then each person is making a judgment call and getting an impression of you. And they don't even realize the lens through which they're giving this impression. They don't even realize, and you don't realize the lenses, these invisible cultural lenses. And so, and it can create problems. Like a person can see you as being really rude, and then they don't want to work with you, or they don't want to sell to you, or they don't, or it can, like, if you're with a romantic partner, it can create arguments.
Yeah, I guess we've seen it.
It is. I mean, that happens between people of the same culture, right? So, like, it's even more heightened when you're, with different cultures.
Yeah, makes sense. So, okay, so how did you end up leaving Peru, and then how long after that were you in the jiu-jitsu space?
Okay, so, well, when I was in Peru, it was really interesting. And I feel like this gets to the dynamics of domestic violence, because many, I work with guys. Jiu-jitsu is a male-dominated sport, so I've, had a lot of contact with guys, and they'll say, like, she's really cute. Why is she with this monster or whatever? Or you see that in like restraining order court. Restraining order, it can be a criminal thing if it's attached to a crime, but if you just go and ask for a restraining order, that's actually a civil proceeding. So, So you'll see.
It's funny, I haven't talked about it on the podcast, and I maybe will at some point, but I have had to get a restraining order. Okay. And it is not easy. But yes, it can be done through civil. It doesn't have to be criminal.
Correct. So, so like the two parties will come to court, and she will be like, it doesn't make sense why she's
bright and great energy, exactly, beautiful, like, and you would smart and full, and then you have this like loser. Look, I'm trying to cut to the chase, right? And you're literally looking at these people like, how?
And also you hear the stories of like all the different ways that the degradation and the humiliation has built up.
Yeah.
And
it starts small usually. That's why it builds.
So that was a lot of my story, is like, you know, people who are narcissistic and abusive, they don't present that way.
Right.
There's a piece of them that knows that if I just out and out with how I really feel, like, I'm not going to have any friends. I'm not going to attract a lover or a relationship. So many of them present as charming.
A lot of charisma.
It's almost like they're well aware of the human condition and what people are looking for. And so that's how he presented when I first got together with him. And then over time, and this is another thing that happens, there's these, so we would call them red flags, but it's boundary testing, right? Like, so you start with like a situation where there isn't necessarily abuse happening, but
just a simple example of telling you what to wear when you are saying like something small that you could overlook and be like, that's kind of weird, like you did that.
You're going out in that, or one situation that happened, which is a definite red flag. But I was also, by this point, I was like down in Peru. He had all my money because the Peruvian banking system, you have to have what's called a DNI, which is I guess we'll just call it like evidence of citizenship.
Got it.
In Peru to have a bank account, and I didn't have any of that, and so I gave him the money to hold it so we could have access to it down there. So I didn't have access to my money, which, by the way, that situation may have been able to be avoided. But, you know, I trusted him. And
if you're in a happy partnership, that would seem like a reasonable thing to do. If you're in a foreign country, it's not that big of a deal.
Totally. And I mean,
not that I'm necessarily recommending anybody else. I'm saying it's understandable why you would be
I was also young, but
I've done similar trust.
Yeah. And two, like, he was happy to take that money. So even if there were other options, it's not like he was going to suggest them to me. And so, but I remember like one of the first things that happened, we went out to eat, and I had never seen him drink alcohol or consume like drugs or hard substances up until that point. And he was doing both of those things regularly, but I had not witnessed it and not talked about it. So we're going out to eat, and before we go out to eat, again, we're in the middle of rural Peru. I don't know where he got this bottle of vodka, but he got it somewhere. I don't remember him. He might have gone to like a store just around the corner in like the little town that we lived in. I don't know, but he pulls out a bottle of vodka. By the way, also, this is a big part of the story too. He was a big guy. So he was probably 6'1" and like 185 to 190 low body fat percentage. He was super into like bodybuilding. He might have even weighed a little bit more than that. And so I feel like I'm, despite all the years in jiu-jitsu, because you get really good at up, you know, like you weigh about this, and I'm still not actually that good at it. But he was like a big athletic dude. So he sits down and he drinks probably like half the bottle of vodka. And like, what am I going to say to him? You know? So I was like, okay, this is not probably going to be great, but he hadn't done anything super fucked up until that point. So I was like, I don't know. I'm a happy drunk too, by the way. I get giggly, I make dumb jokes, I laugh really loud. So I was like, maybe he'd like that. I don't know. So we go, we get on a bus, we go find a place to eat, a little restaurant, and he starts acting loud and belligerent and like kind of causing a scene. And so I was like, dude, chill, you know, like, I don't know if, like, it looks like you might be having a good time, or I know that you had a bunch of alcohol, but like you're causing
Yeah.
People are like noticing. And that pissed him off. And that set him off. It's almost like he was trying to provoke that kind of a reaction. Like, how much crazy stuff can I do in public before she says something? And then, of course, as soon as I say something, now I'm the villain person, who's saying something. By the end of the night, he had stripped down completely naked, like completely naked in the street. Everybody's like, who's walking by is watching him. He threw his cell phone and his wallet